Hi, my name is Aaron, and I'd like to talk about the sovereignty of God today. The goal is to help believers better understand the sovereignty of God so that they could better rest in God. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16 says, "Rejoice always." That's the whole verse, and that's a command. And I know it's really hard to do, especially when you're going through a difficult time, but God would not command us to do something that's impossible. And it's a simple command, rejoice always. But how hard is that to do, right? So how do you actually do this, even when you're suffering? And the answer is knowing the sovereignty of God and his love for us. And we know that he loves us because he died for us on the cross. And so let's move to the sovereignty of God. Now, no matter what your circumstance, we know that according to Romans 8:28, that he is using everything for our good. That's a key truth there that we'll talk about. The truth is, if we knew everything God knows, we would thank God for what we are currently going through. And a lot of these Christians who are mature and they've been through a lot, they'll look back at some of their trials from 10 years ago or so and say, I'm glad God put me through that. They could see the good that they received and the glory that God received by the trials that they went through many years ago. Now, you would say the same thing if you waited 10 years from now, if you trusted and hung on to God. But my challenge to you is thank him today. Thank him this very moment for what you're going through, for you know without a shadow of a doubt that God is using everything for your good because he said so. And that is living by faith, and that pleases him. And I want to demonstrate this through two people's lives. I want to explain it through two biblical men. They actually went through this, and they serve as a role model. And first is Joseph. He was sold into slavery and spent at least 2 years in prison. And although while he was going through these circumstances and sufferings, he didn't understand why he was going through it, but clearly he was shown, that because of what he went through, thousands of lives were saved, and it was used for his good. So I want to talk a little bit more about what I mean by saying for his good. So if Joseph was left to himself, I would imagine he might have been a pretty entitled, kind of selfish person, being favored by his dad all the time. But instead, God put him in this trial to mold him, to make him into a man of character. And in the process, thousands of lives were saved. Now, Joseph, after he went through all of that, he knows all that, but if he knew all of that, like why he was going through all that while he was in prison, he would thank God, right? So my challenge to you is to thank God right now in your prison. Okay, know that God is using it for your good and that you will see clearly why you went through it. And as Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. I'm challenging you to do that now. Trust in him. Know that God is using it for your good. And you're going to thank him now or later, whether you like it or not. If you prevail through this trial, you're going to see that. And so thank him now. That will glorify God so much more than if you thank him later. And the second person I want to talk about is Job. Job lost all 10 of his children, his wealth, and health in a short amount of time for a reason he didn't understand. And he really demanded God provide an explanation. Why did this happen? I need an explanation. And God provided an answer in the form of asking Job a series of questions. Like the first, one of the questions was, where were you, Job, when I set the foundations of the earth? Answer me if you have understanding. God went on and on asking Job these questions that were absolutely impossible by man. Like setting boundaries for horizons and things, just something that we can't even comprehend. And in chapter 42, Job answers. It says, therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. I had heard of you, by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes sees you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. Now, as you know, the Lord blessed Job with twice as more than he had before, and Job went on to live another 140 years. But what I want to point out here is that while the Lord spoke to Job, all these questions, asking Job, not once did God give an explanation for why Job went through all that suffering. You know why? Because Job knowing the sovereignty of God was enough. And for us, knowing the sovereignty of God should be enough as well. Okay? But also, you can see some of the good that was done through Job's trial. If you think about it, Satan is the one who brought this idea up to God, right? And as Job suffered and he trusted in God and prevailed, can you imagine all the hosts of angels and demons just watching in awe, and how much glory went to God through this? So don't try to expect to see everything now, and don't expect a clear explanation from God, but know that He is sovereign and that He is working all things for our good, and that is enough for us. I also want you to know that God cares about not only the big things, but what we perceive as the small things. It says here that He set the foundation of the whole earth, but also in Job 39, verse 1, God asked Job, "Do you know the time the mountain goats give birth? Do you observe the calving of the deer?" God even cares about when baby goats and baby deers are being born. He's there observing them. So how much more is He observing us? That He is with us and He understands what we're going through. So I hope you understand that He really is always with you, and He loves you, and in His sovereignty, He is working all things for your good. So rejoice always. You can trust Him and you can rest in Him. God bless you.